Today we're going to learn how to foundation paper piece, and we're going to use the 12.5-inch log cabin paper from It's So Emma. It comes in a pad of 42 sheets, so you can make a really large quilt with this. And each paper is nice and thin, so it's easy to rip out at the end. It's also pre-shaded for dark fabrics and light fabrics, if that's the kind of block that you want to do. So it's very easy, and it works with a jelly roll, which is what makes this so fast. There's no pre-cutting. There's no pre-measuring. I just chose 2 dark strips and 2 lighter strips because I'm making the double colored. And then I did cut 2 beginning squares. I didn't pre-measure these. I just know they're going to be big enough to start me off. The other items you'll need is a rotary cutter, an iron. This is really handy. I have it in 2 sizes. It's the add 1/4 plus ruler, and it's got a little lip that you'll see how that works in a few minutes. I also happened to acquire this very large one at a recent quilt auction with my guild, so that's always very handy, but again, you don't have to have that. I have my cutting station to my right, and I have my ironing station to my left, so I don't have to get up. All right, with this paper, the numbers you see on the front will tell you what order to lay your next piece of fabric down. You must go in numerical order for this to work properly. So we're going to start with number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is going to be on our darker side. 2 is going to be our lighter fabric. You're going to sew your lines on this side of the paper, but your fabric will actually be on the back side. So you can see that you can look through this paper and see the numbers, and you can see the lines without any problem. If you have a table like this, you could always put a light up underneath, and it could be like a light box. I'm using my camera phone right now, so I can't do that for you, but you can see even with a lamp, it's very easy to see through. This is where people get kind of confused because you're sewing on the number side, your fabric is on the back side. One tip I'm going to give you, if you are using this light and dark combination, I go ahead and draw my arrows on my dark side. So as I'm laying this fabric out, I don't accidentally go put the wrong fabric on the wrong side, which I have done. Okay, so we're going to start. Our number 1 piece is dark, and this is going to be my dark start. So I'm going to lay it right on top of my 1. Let me show you up close. This line is our seam line. So I want to make sure the piece of fabric I cut will go at least 1/4 inch on each side of my seam lines, which I cut this one pretty close. So it's going to be very close. That number 1 piece of fabric is face up. Now I'm going to sew my number 2 straight down. It is going to go face down right along that same seam that we just found. All right, I take a pin and I pin right through the fabric and the paper. Won't cause any problems. I'm going to flip it back over, and we're going to sew that seam between 1 and 2. Okay, one other tip that you're going to want to do is lower your stitch length. Mine is naturally at 3 on this machine, but I lower it to 2.5. You could go all the way down to 2 if you like, and that's going to make your stitches a little tighter, so when you go to rip this paper off the back, it's going to be easier to rip, and your stitches will hopefully not come out. Now I'm just going to go straight down. That line. And you can see the line. We're going to turn it back over and open up our seam. And I actually get my iron and iron right on the paper. So I'm going to iron the seam down quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Before you ask, this is an Olicio iTouch iron, and it does always stay down. When you touch it, it automatically lowers its feet and it's ready to iron. And then when you let go, it raises up. You can find these everywhere in sewing shops, Amazon, Olicio irons. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is show you how to get a nice clean edge here. So I'm going to go back over to where you can see my numbers. I've done 1 and 2, so my next number is 3, if you can see that. Now, this little ruler, again, is called the Add a Quarter Plus. Ignore the tape I have on here because I chipped it, and I just am protecting the edge with that tape. So what I'm going to do is use this side to sit right on my line between my 2 and 3. So I can easily fold back that line. You can also do it just by looking at the line. That works too. It looks like I'm pretty close to a 1/4 inch here, but this is where this lip comes in handy. You see how it's a little bit higher? That's gonna hook onto your paper. So where I folded my paper, that lip hooks on, leaving whatever's left to be discarded, which is hardly any. And it's ready for me to lay my next piece of fabric down. So my next piece is a light color. And I'm going to just grab one here. Again, we're not cutting. This is straight off the jelly roll. I'm cutting the selvage edge. And I'm just going to lay this down right on top of what I've already sewn. Now, you can see, it might not show up in the video well, but you can see through here to see the lines. Again, you want to make sure that your fabric's going to go over each line at least a 1/4 inch, if not a little bit more. So I'm just going to eyeball that. I'm going to pin it again. Well, it doesn't want to go through that. Make sure it's nice and flat before you take it to the machine. Another tip is when you do turn it over on your machine, make sure your fabric doesn't get bunched up or turned under. You want it to lay very flat. So we're going to go back to the machine and sew that. Okay, we're going to go right down our number 3 line. It won't take but a second. Do not backstitch when you're doing this, because you don't want any locking stitches. Making it harder to cut. Okay, so I've done that. I'm going to turn it over and do the same process. We're going to unpin. We're going to fold back and iron this, and then we're going to trim. I'll show you one more trimming, and then I'll go ahead and finish this block and show you at the end how to finish it up. Okay, now we're ready for our number 4. So we are going to take our straight edge right on the line to give us a good folding point. We're going to just fold that down. I'm going to hook the lip of my Add a Quarter. Again, I'm not leaving much to have to be trimmed. Sometimes you'll have a lot to be trimmed. Sometimes you will not have much. So our next one is going to be number 4, and as you can see, it's on my dark side. So I'm just going to grab my dark fabric. All this fabric, in case you wonder, is from Ruby Star Society. It's very bright. I'll show you a picture of the log cabin blocks that I've already completed in a minute. Again, I'm going to just lay this right on top of my next section. I'm just going to eyeball the cut and pin it back down. Now, the longer these strips get out around the edges, you'll want to use more than one pin, because you never want to let it get bunched up under your sewing machine. Okay, we're coming up on needing our very last strip, so I was going to show you how this works when you get to the longer strips. We're going to turn it over again. This is where the long Add a quarter ruler comes in handy. I'm going to fold over. If you have sewn past your line, just simply pull your stitch out of the paper. No problem. Okay, this one actually looks like it's already basically a 1/4 inch, so I'm not going to trim anything here. I'm just going to lay it back down, and I'm going to lay my last strip on here. We'll cut this little tail off. And I do want to mention, when you do pin, you're going to want to use these flathead pins, because if you have the little ball head pins, it's going to not go under your needle or your presser foot well, and it might get off track while you're sewing. So make sure you have the flathead pins, and we're going to do one last row, and I'll show you what to do at the end. So we have finished our fabric placement. Everything is down. It's looking great. So what the last thing you're going to do is to trim off any excess that you have on the back of your paper. Now with this big log cabin paper, the only thing you need to trim is the very outside 1/4 inch. And you can see it tells you do not trim this line, do trim this line. So we're going to go around, trim that outer line, and then we will rip the paper. I'm just going to use my same ruler here with my rotary cutter because it works just fine. You're going to get the edge and the paper off, the edge of the fabric and the edge of the paper. Okay, so now I have a perfectly accurate log cabin quilt block that's going to be 12 inches finished. The only thing left to do before I put it up on my design wall with all its friends is to start ripping the paper. And this is kind of the fun part if it goes well. It should rip very easily. If you start on this loose end, it's easier. Just pull it up. Maybe help it to get started at your intersections. That's where it sticks the most, and rip away. So we're going to go around and do that all the way, get all the paper off, and then I'm going to show you what my other quilt blocks look like, and you will have learned how to do the basics of foundation paper piecing. Okay, there's the block. I've added it to my design wall. And here are the other ones that I've finished so far. It's going to be a very colorful quilt. As you can see, I haven't done necessarily light and dark, but I have done contrasting sides. And if you look close, you can find a couple that I messed up on, but that's okay, because when this is said and done, it will be finished and cozy and cute. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, just click the like button, and I appreciate you watching. Thank you.